The United Kingdom has always been seen as one of the most developed and influential nations in the world. For decades, British cities have been symbols of prosperity, innovation, and opportunity, attracting people from different places in search of a better life. But behind the major financial centres, modern buildings, and the image of a wealthy country, there is a reality that often remains hidden. Across many regions of the United Kingdom, entire communities are facing a combination of problems that seem increasingly difficult to overcome. The disappearance of traditional industries, the rising cost of living, the lack of well-paid jobs, the housing crisis, and the departure of young people are transforming the lives of millions. While some cities continue to grow and attract investment, others have become trapped in a cycle of decline where decades of economic hardship have left deep scars. Neighbourhoods that were once centres of work and prosperity now face poverty, social problems, and a growing sense of abandonment. But how did places that helped build the economic strength of the United Kingdom reach this point? Why do so many people feel that the future is becoming increasingly distant in their own cities? In this documentary, we will explore 10 places where life is becoming increasingly difficult, revealing the hidden challenges behind the statistics and showing the stories of the communities facing this new reality. If there is one place in the United Kingdom that represents the feeling of abandonment and being forgotten, that place is Jaywick. Located on the coast of Essex, this small community has become one of the most extreme examples of how inequality can remain hidden inside a developed country. Here, the problem is not only poverty, but also the feeling that decades have passed without anyone truly solving these issues. Jaywick is often described as one of the most deprived areas in the United Kingdom, repeatedly appearing among the places with the highest levels of deprivation in the country. Many residents struggle with almost every aspect of life: income, employment, health, housing, and access to basic services. The result is a community trapped in a cycle where opportunities seem increasingly out of reach. Walking through the streets of Jaywick reveals a reality very different from the traditional image of the United Kingdom. Many homes were built decades ago as small holiday cottages, but eventually became permanent residences for families who had no other options. Some of these properties suffer from structural problems, poor insulation, and difficulties keeping warm during the colder months. The isolation only increases this feeling of abandonment. Jaywick has limited transport connections, making access difficult for those without a car. For many residents, reaching jobs, hospitals, or other essential services can become a major challenge. This lack of mobility further reduces their chances of improving their lives. But perhaps the biggest problem in Jaywick is the lack of prospects. Many young people grow up seeing few opportunities around them and begin to view leaving the community as the only path toward a better future. Meanwhile, those who remain face an aging population, health problems, and a community that struggles every day with the feeling of having been left behind. The situation in Jaywick raises a difficult question. How can one of the richest countries in the world have places where so many people feel forgotten? Is this an unavoidable consequence of economic change, or the result of years of underinvestment and neglect? Blackpool was once known as the holiday capital of the British working class. Throughout much of the 20th century, millions of visitors travelled every year to this coastal town in Lancashire, attracted by its beaches, famous promenade, amusement parks, and the entertainment atmosphere that made Blackpool one of the most popular destinations in the United Kingdom. But behind this image of a seaside resort lies a much more difficult reality. In recent decades, Blackpool has gone through a long period of economic decline. With the rise of international travel and changes in British tourism habits, many visitors began choosing other destinations. Traditional hotels lost customers, businesses closed, and some areas of the town began facing neglect and a lack of investment. Today, Blackpool has some of the poorest neighbourhoods in England. In certain areas, many residents struggle with unemployment, low wages, and limited opportunities for growth. The town has entered a cycle where economic problems create social problems, and these issues make it even harder to attract new investment. One of the most concerning signs of this crisis appears in health indicators. Blackpool records some of the worst health outcomes in the country, with residents facing higher levels of illness, mental health problems, and a healthy life expectancy far below the national average. For many people, the years that should represent a period of comfort and stability instead become marked by difficulties and limitations. Another major challenge is the rise of what are known as deaths of despair, deaths linked to social desperation, including issues involving substance abuse, isolation, and a lack of hope for the future. The town has become an example of how decades of economic hardship can affect not only people's incomes, but also their health and their belief in a better future. There is also a strong contrast in Blackpool. While tourists still arrive to visit its famous attractions, such as the Tower and the Promenade, some nearby streets reveal a completely different reality, with deteriorating buildings, poverty, and communities that feel they have been left behind. Middlesbrough is a town that represents one of the most striking stories of British industrial decline. Throughout much of the 20th century, it was one of the United Kingdom's major centres of heavy industry, known especially for steel production, shipbuilding, and factories that provided thousands of jobs for the region. For decades, Middlesbrough's economy depended on these large industries. They were not only workplaces, but also the heart of the community. Entire families built their lives around the factories, creating an identity connected to the city's industrial pride. However, when these industries began to disappear, Middlesbrough lost much more than jobs. It lost the economic foundation that supported the entire region. The closure of steelworks and the decline of heavy industry left behind a huge void. Small businesses that depended on these workers were also affected, and many communities began facing unemployment, low wages, and few alternatives to rebuild the local economy. Today, Middlesbrough continues to face some of the highest levels of poverty in the United Kingdom. Many areas of the town struggle with economic difficulties, while families deal with challenges related to income, health, and professional opportunities. For many people, the lack of well-paid jobs has created a feeling of stagnation, as if the town has become trapped in the past. One of the biggest challenges is the future of the younger population. Many young people leave Middlesbrough in search of better opportunities in larger cities, such as Manchester or London. They do not necessarily leave because they reject their hometown, but because they believe their chances of building a successful career are greater elsewhere. The result is a community where many older residents remain surrounded by memories of a time when Middlesbrough was an industrial powerhouse. The old industrial complexes, which once represented growth and prosperity, now represent an era that has disappeared. Birmingham is one of the most important cities in the United Kingdom. As the country's second largest city, it has always been known as one of Britain's major economic engines, with a history shaped by industry, trade, and innovation. During the Industrial Revolution, Birmingham earned the nickname the City of 1,000 Trades because of its enormous manufacturing capacity and its crucial role in the country's economic growth. But behind the modern buildings, new urban projects, and the image of a city undergoing transformation, there is a much more unequal reality. Birmingham faces one of the biggest challenges of major British cities. Economic growth has not always reached all of its residents. While some areas receive major investment and experience rapid modernisation, neighbourhoods such as Ladywood and Perry Barr continue to face deep problems related to poverty, unemployment, and a lack of opportunities. In some communities, many families struggle financially, even while living close to areas considered symbols of the city's progress. One of the clearest examples of this inequality can be seen in the housing crisis. Rising property prices and rents, driven by the increasing value of certain areas, have made it more difficult for many residents to remain in the neighbourhoods where they grew up. For some families, the city's modernisation has brought new buildings and businesses, but it has also increased the feeling that they are being left behind. Child poverty also remains a major challenge in Birmingham. Many children grow up in families under pressure from the high cost of living and financial instability, creating a cycle where the struggles faced by one generation can be passed on to the next. In addition, Birmingham faces challenges related to social inequality, infrastructure, and public services. The city has a large and diverse population, but not all groups are able to benefit equally from the opportunities created by economic development. The great paradox of Birmingham is exactly this: a city that is growing, modernising, and attracting investment, but where many residents still feel that they are not part of this growth. The new buildings and transformation projects show a city looking toward the future, but some communities continue to struggle with old problems. Hartlepool is a coastal town in the northeast of England that carries the marks of an old industrial era that was never fully replaced. During much of the 20th century, the town prospered thanks to its port, shipbuilding industry, and heavy industries that provided jobs for thousands of people. For many families, these industries were not only a source of income, but also part of the community's identity. For decades, Hartlepool was built around industrial work. The shipyards, factories, and port activities powered the local economy and created a sense of stability. However, with the decline of British heavy industry, many of these jobs disappeared, leaving behind a town searching for a new direction. The closure of companies and the reduction of economic opportunities had deep consequences. Small businesses lost strength, many families became dependent on lower-paid jobs, and some areas began facing problems related to poverty, health, and a lack of investment. One of Hartlepool's biggest challenges is the departure of young people. Many leave the town in search of better opportunities in larger cities such as Newcastle, Leeds, or Manchester. For those who remain, there is a feeling that success often depends on leaving, creating a cycle where young and skilled people move away while the town loses part of its potential for renewal. The economic crisis has also affected public services and quality of life. Communities that were already struggling have faced greater pressure on healthcare, social support, and local infrastructure. For many residents, decades of promises of recovery have not been enough to change the reality of some areas. The contrast between the past and the present is one of Hartlepool's strongest characteristics. The town still carries the pride of its industrial history, but it also lives with the signs of an economy that lost its main foundation. The old symbols of prosperity now serve as reminders of a time when there were more jobs and greater confidence in the future. Kingston upon Hull, known simply as Hull, is a port city in eastern England that has had a deep connection with trade and the sea for centuries. Located in East Yorkshire, Hull was once one of the United Kingdom's major maritime centres, with a busy port that connected the city to international markets and supported thousands of jobs. During much of the 20th century, Hull's economy relied heavily on port activities, fishing, and industries connected to maritime trade. For many families, the port represented stability and an opportunity to build a better life. However, with changes in the global economy, the decline of the fishing industry, and the transformation of the job market, the city began facing a long period of economic difficulties. Today, Hull still carries the consequences of this decline. The city has some of the most poverty-affected areas in the United Kingdom, with communities facing problems related to low wages, unemployment, and a lack of professional opportunities. In many neighbourhoods, the challenge is not only a lack of income, but also the feeling of isolation from the economic growth benefiting other parts of the country. Hull's geographical location has also become one of its biggest challenges. Although the port remains important, the city is far from England's main economic corridors. This distance makes it more difficult to attract major investment and creates the feeling that Hull is disconnected from the regions where many opportunities are concentrated. Another important issue is the departure of residents in search of better living conditions. Many young people and skilled professionals leave the city to look for work in larger urban centres, taking away part of the talent that could help drive local economic recovery. When a city loses its younger and more qualified population, the process of renewal becomes even more difficult. Education is also a major challenge. Some communities face difficulties related to professional qualifications, limiting access to higher value jobs in an economy increasingly based on technology and knowledge. In recent years, Hull has tried to change its image through regeneration projects, cultural investments, and new sectors linked to renewable energy. The city has shown that it still has potential, but transformation is a slow process for a region that has spent decades facing difficulties. Bradford is a city that represents one of the greatest contradictions of modern Britain. Located in West Yorkshire, it was once one of the country's most important industrial cities. known worldwide for its textile production and the strength of its wool industry. During the 19th century, Bradford was considered one of England's most prosperous cities, attracting workers, investment, and immigrants from different parts of the world. But the decline of the great textile industry completely changed the city's future. As production moved to other countries and the British economy transformed, thousands of jobs disappeared. The wealth that once powered Bradford began to decline, leaving some communities facing decades of economic hardship. Today, Bradford faces some of the highest levels of poverty in the United Kingdom. Despite being a large city with a young and diverse population, many areas still struggle with low wages, unemployment, and limited opportunities for those without the necessary professional qualifications. One of Bradford's biggest challenges is related to education and workforce skills. In an economy increasingly dependent on technology and knowledge, many people have become trapped in low-paid jobs because they did not have access to the opportunities needed to keep up with changes in the labour market. This difficulty especially affects younger generations. Many children grow up in families facing financial insecurity, which can limit their future opportunities. Poverty creates a difficult cycle to break. Fewer opportunities during childhood can mean fewer chances of accessing better jobs in adulthood. Another major challenge is inequality within the city itself. Bradford has areas with strong economic potential, universities, and a talented population, but it also has neighbourhoods where residents face problems related to housing quality, infrastructure, and public services. The city also faces challenges related to social integration and economic differences between communities. Decades of hardship have created deep divisions, causing some people to feel that they cannot participate in the economic growth happening in other parts of the country. Despite this, Bradford is not a city without a future. In recent years, there have been efforts to revitalise the economy, improve education, and use its cultural diversity as a strength. The city has a young population and a strategic location near major centres such as Leeds, factors that could support its recovery. But the biggest question remains: can Bradford transform its enormous potential into real opportunities for its residents? Burnley is a town in the county of Lancashire that carries the deep marks of an old industrial era. During the 19th century and much of the 20th century, the town prospered thanks to the textile industry and cotton production, becoming an important industrial centre in northern England. The factories powered the local economy and provided stable employment for thousands of families. For generations, life in Burnley was closely connected to the large mills and factories that dominated the town's landscape. These industries were not only workplaces, but also part of the community's identity. However, with the decline of the British textile industry and the relocation of production to other countries, many of these jobs disappeared, leaving an impact that is still felt today. The result was a long period of economic hardship. Burnley began facing problems related to unemployment, low wages, and a lack of opportunities. Some areas of the town became trapped in a cycle of poverty where families struggle to improve their lives while the old symbols of industrial prosperity remain as reminders of a distant past. One of the most visible problems today is fuel poverty. Many families in Burnley are forced to make difficult choices during the winter, deciding between heating their homes or saving money for other basic needs. In one of the colder regions of the United Kingdom, energy costs have become a huge burden for residents who are already facing financial difficulties. The economic crisis also directly affects quality of life. Problems related to health, food, and well-being are more common in vulnerable communities, especially among families living with little financial stability. For many people, poverty does not simply mean earning less money, but constantly living under pressure to maintain the basics. Another challenge facing Burnley is the loss of confidence within the community itself. Decades of economic decline have caused some residents to feel that the town has been forgotten, while other regions have received more investment. When a population loses hope for change, rebuilding the energy and spirit of a community becomes even more difficult. Despite its problems, Burnley also has positive aspects and is trying to build a new future. The town is seeking to attract new businesses, improve its infrastructure, and take advantage of its location near other important centres in northern England. However, recovery requires more than new projects. It requires creating real opportunities for the people who live there.